The Mr. Bean movie from 1997 is an underrated comedy. I'm telling you, it's great. I rewatched it just recently for the first time in a long time. Now, I went and saw this at the movies when it came out back in 1997, and I loved it then. And rewatching it again, I loved it now. It's hilarious. Now, if you're not a fan of Mr. Bean, you're not going to like this movie, all right? But if you are a fan of Mr. Bean and you haven't watched this movie, you're missing out on some of his best material. It is comedy gold. All right? I love this character to begin with. So going into this movie, when I first saw it as a kid, I loved it. I was over the moon. It was like an hour and a half, more, actually, close to 2 hour long Mr. Bean episode. And I couldn't get enough of it. And the premise is great too. I mean, it allowed for so many great moments and situations, because Mr. Bean thrives on getting himself into sticky situations, getting himself in trouble, situations that could be disastrous for him, and he somehow, through his genius, finds his way out. All right? He always fixes the situation for himself and gets away with it all. That's the comedy genius of the writing of Mr. Bean. And a lot of people probably just dismiss Rowan Atkinson's character and this series as just, mindless slapstick humor. It's not. It's so well written, and there's so much intricate little details that fit together that are just brilliant moments of hilarity that arise from the bloody elaborate trouble he gets himself into and the elaborate plans he makes to get out of it. Like I said, he is a secret genius, Mr. Bean. People think he's just a dummy, a stupid bumbling oaf, right? And he was described as pretty much like an 8-year-old in an adult's body. And that pretty much is what he is. But he has this amazing, like a savant's mind, to be able to come up with just ingenious plans to get himself out of these situations. And in this movie, it's played out on the bloody big screen there for us all to witness in its bloody hilarity. The guy destroys Whistler's mother, one of America's most prized paintings of all time. It's, what is it, like a 150, 200-year-old painting? Incredible history. It's priceless. And Mr. Bean, who they mistakenly think is some kind of art professor from England, when he's just the bloody security guard at the art gallery in London, who falls asleep in his chair. All right, and somehow they think he's the professor, and he destroys the painting by accident. That's the thing. Usually, most of the trouble he gets into is accidental. He doesn't do it on purpose. All right? He gets himself into trouble. He accidentally sneezes on it, tries to rub it off. The hanky he rubs it off with has ink from a fucking leaked pen in it. So he puts ink all over it. Then he sneaks the painting away, pretending it's a fucking table. And he's like a waiter guy pushing along one of those dummy waiters on wheels. All right, he's even doing the fake squeaks. And there's a bit where he's coming down this narrow hallway, squeezing past people, and there's another guy, a real waiter, pushing one of those carts. And he squeezes past him, and the guy doesn't notice, and then looks back and notices that Bean got past him with the same table, and he's scratching his head going, how the fuck did he get past me? Oh, man. There are moments in this that are so hilarious to me, and probably maybe they're not to anybody else, but I was howling with laughter. So he destroys the painting, he tries to fix it, he accidentally puts paint thinner all over it, thinking that he's cleaned it up, looks away, looks back, the fucking face is melting off, he rubs it off and then fixes it by drawing this stupid cartoon caricature of a bald man with a giant nose. That was his attempt to fix the painting. And that main actor, who's also in Ghostbusters 2. That hilarious guy with the curly hair. He plays the American guy whose family Bean is staying with. His reaction to seeing the disfigured painting is so funny to me. He just freaks out. I found the acting in that scene to be great. And Bean's acting is always so subdued. He hardly talks at all. It's mostly physical comedy with his face, with his body and all that. But the few moments he talks in this are gold as well. His little speech he gives at the end is great. But then he has to go and rectify this situation of this destroyed, priceless painting. And he does. He fucking replaces it with a poster. Genius! That's a genius move, because who's going to notice that at the presentation? Nobody. And by the time they do, they'll probably figure that it was stolen. You know, they probably don't keep the security footage either that would have showed him, because they probably won't discover it for weeks or months. And that poor guard who got bloody dosed with like an entire bottle of laxative. And then sometimes he has a bit of a sinister streak, Mr. Bean. Like, he didn't need to switch the keys. Yeah, it bought him some extra time, but that was cruel. He was just torturing the guy who couldn't get into the bathroom. Oh man, and I felt that guy's pain. Haven't we all been there, trying to get into a toilet and it's just coming and you can't hold it? And there's just some other moments in this movie that are so some of the funniest scenes I've seen. And especially in Mr. Bean's entire repertoire. These are some of the funniest scenes you will ever see. All right? And one of them is the scene where he's first arrives at the art gallery and he's got to meet all the big wigs in the meeting, and he goes to use the bathroom, and he goes to wash his hands and sprays water all over his crotch. And then he's trying to dry it on the hand dryer, and it looks like he's humping it. When that poor guy walks out and sees him, it looks like he's dry humping the drying machine. And then he's got to pretend that I wasn't actually doing anything. And he pretends he's like inspecting the light bulb and it's boiling hot. And he's got to hold in the pain until the guy walks out of the room. Oh, and then he can finally let it go. I found that scene very funny. And then after all that, he wets himself again. And he's walking around holding the brochure right on his crotch, pretending he's looking at it. And then in the meeting, he's trying to hide it as well, and he's standing in front of the fan and just following it. Oh, some of these scenes are just they're probably innocuous scenes for most people, but for me, I'm losing it. And the scene that had me losing it the most, apart from that amazing scene where he tampers with that ride and makes everyone fly out of their chairs. The scene that had me howling the most in this movie is right near the end, when they're all happy and they're celebrating the fact that he fucking stole the original painting and replaced it with a poster that he glued on with frickin' chewing gum, bubble gum. All right, it's a scene where they're celebrating, they're driving in the beautiful streets of Los Angeles there, and he bloody well is taking pictures of all the sights. He leans over, almost causes a car accident. But then some biker gives him the finger. And he's like, I don't know, Mr. Bean's living on some other planet where he's not aware that that's rude. Because they use the finger in England. But anyway, according to Mr. Bean, he's never seen it before. It's an American thing. And now he thinks that's a greeting. That's how you say hello. And he's giving the finger to everybody. He's just waving his hands. He's giving the finger to two little old ladies walking. He's giving the finger to some women in the street. He's giving the finger to just random strangers. And I was howling at that, right? I was like in tears. And my kids were laughing their ass off too. And then right at the end, he makes amends with the family after literally saving the daughter's life. And everyone loves him. And he's giving them all these ridiculous, stupid presents like a fucking Barbie doll to the grown daughter. And they're all saying goodbye. And then he just flips them the bird as they drive off. I don't know why that I just found that so funny to my absolute core. That tickled my funny bone like nothing else. Oh my. And there's a lot of little moments in this movie that I'd forgotten about as a kid. Like when he's in the shower and the husband accidentally gets in as well, and then they're like, because it's all steamy in there and they can't see, they've got soap in their eyes and they're trying to get out and they keep crashing into each other and pushing against the wall. Then the phone rings and Bean insists on answering it, and it's the guy's boss, and he's like, oh yeah, he's right here in the shower with me. Ah, that is so good. That movie is an underrated comedy, honestly. I love I love the short skits of Mr. Bean, the short, episodes from the 90s. They were all fantastic. Some hilarious moments that also had me laughing out loud as well. But I felt this movie was just a great culmination of his legacy. They put, some of his best moments, like he had the dentist moment in the show and he had a doctor moment, and so they sort of rolled that together and had him in the hospital there in the surgery scene, which was great as well. And the cops on the bloody on the operating table about to be gassed out, and the last thing he sees is Mr. Bean as the surgeon giving him a thumbs up. Oh, what a way to go out. What a way to go to sleep. And that's the last image you see. But yeah, they sort of took those elements from the show and rolled that into a great hospital sequence. And there was a great the driving sequence, him tampering with the ride. That was a great sequence. Just had a lot of great sequences that felt like it felt like a bigger budget, more polished, better written version of the show. And whoever directed it really had a love. Like, it felt like they were a fan of the show because it had the heart and spirit of Mr. Bean. That mischievousness without him, he's not evil, but he's mischievous. He's like they say, he's a child in an adult's body. But he's also a strategic genius when it comes to unfucking himself from situations that would have other people potentially thrown in jail or bloody, arrested. And so it's a great all-round movie. There are moments that are so funny to me, of course, because humor is, subjective and all that. But Mr. Bean's got a giant fan base across the world, and if you're one of them and you've never seen this movie, go and watch it right now. It's well worth the watch. And there's a sequel as well where he goes to Europe. I didn't find that one as funny or as enjoyable. It's more polished. It feels like, it came like, more than a decade later, but it didn't have the heart and the charm of this one. I felt this one had a little bit of heart as well when he sort of made amends with the family, but then and then gives them the finger as they drive off. Oh man, that was so good. I'll never get over how funny that moment is in the movie. The airport sequence is great too, when he's just got the finger gun. So it's so stupid. And when they're interviewing him and he doesn't know that it's it's one-way glass, and he thinks it's a mirror. He's doing just dumb shit in the mirror. And it was great because, it was a great sort of mix of American and British comedy as well. And I love both. A lot of people point their nose up and say, oh, I love British comedy and I don't like American comedy. It's not as highbrow and as intelligent, which is bullshit, all right? Because a lot of British comedy is just toilet humor as well. So I don't get this idea that British comedy is so much more intellectual. There's intellectual British comedy, there's toilet humor British comedy, and the same goes for the Americans. They got their smart stuff and they got their lowbrow stuff, and I love all of it. Sometimes you're in the mood for a Yes Minister. Sometimes you're in the mood for, some slapstick, bloody Three Stooges shit. All right? It depends what mood you're in. And I enjoy comedy across the spectrum. So, and Mr. Bean is one of those that I really love. And this movie was a love letter to Mr. Bean fans. That's how I always felt. Highly entertaining, well acted, and just some great comedic moments and set pieces that will live on forever in my mind and I'm sure in the minds of other people. So let me know in the comments if you also enjoyed this movie and if you found the scenes I did as funny as I did, or you think I'm just going over the top laughing at dumb shit that isn't funny in your opinions. Let me know in the comments. All right, folks? So, thanks for listening. Please like, share, subscribe. Take care, be good, and I'll see you later.